sorry about that. Okay. All right. Excellent. So we're doing the Gaon of Vilna. We had started him last week. Before that, we talked about the growth of the Hasidic movement and how, the reaction of what will become known as the Misnadim, Misnagei Neged, that they are against the observance of Yahadus according to the Hasidim. And the big problem is the study of Kabbalah, because just maybe 30, 40 years prior to that, there had been numerous Mashiach Sheker, false messiahs, and they came to that because they immersed themselves so much in Kabbalah, then they started thinking, well, they were the Messiah. So there was just a lot of opposition among certain groups of Rabbanim and Jews, mostly the northern part of Poland and Lithuania, to any study of Kabbalah. And Hasidus is based on Kabbalah. So that's why they were afraid. I mean, look, it obviously proved itself to be bona fide Judaism. They weren't, going against halacha, but that's what had happened in the past, and that's what they were so worried and concerned about, and that's why such negative feelings. So the most prominent name among the Misnagdim is the Gaon from Vilna. He's called the Gaon because he was a genius. He really was. He was 6 years old, like he had mastered, all of Chumash or Tanakh. He was studying Gemara. He was this unusually brilliant person. He got married, by the way, at the age of 18. I don't know how many children he had, but he did have numerous children. He wasn't living at home too much. He spent the whole day learning. He really did. And he didn't like to do it in the house when Ashley would do one with a bunch of around. So he actually, studied elsewhere at the beginning, sort of secluded himself in some hut. And then eventually some wealthy people built him like his own small base medrash next to his house. I guess in those days it was a bigger plot of land. Maybe just because he liked to be outside of the community, he was living in any case toward the edge of Vilna. And that's where he would sit and study. Apparently, this man, I don't know how, but he survived on maybe 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night. And they told him even that 2 to 3 hours would be broken up into like half-hour slots, that he would like rest, perk up and continue learning. So, I mean, he was an unusual individual. And as I say, he liked learning on his own. He didn't like to have a chavrusa. He didn't want to be distracted by anything. Now, later on, you'll learn about some of his thought processes, his interpretations, some of his perushim, and different things came to be written down. But he himself never wrote anything, except this is how people knew what afterwards to compile and then to have published. In the margins of his whatever sforim he was studying, he would write notes. So based on those notes, they were able. So it always makes me think of Rabbi Soloveitchik, who never wrote all those books that they now have, about him. But people had taken notes at his lectures, or they recorded it in the machine, and from based on that, that's how So they're authentic words, but it's not himself sat and wrote, the book. The same here with the Vilna Gaon. The other, I come from this Snottish family. We kind of grew up fairly straight, but it's not that there's no joy at all. That was a big thing with the Hasidim, but they wanted to appeal to those people who perhaps are not so learned and don't have the background or the capability of sitting and studying, learning, all day long. So a lot of people felt like a sense of loss. Are they nothing? Because they can't, master, studying Chumash, the Gemara, various misfortunes, so this is why with the Baal Shem Tov started with them, and then the Magid and Mezrich, and then all the various other branches of Hasidim that came afterwards. That they said, well, you can if do at Hashem the Simcha, dress. You can, and how do you do this through prayer? So it's not so important to sit and study and learn all day. You don't have that capability, but when you do, you know, pray, and their davening tends to be, I guess, a bit longer, and they do it with lots of singing and dancing, uh, and that's good, and that's fine, and you're a good Jew, even if you, as I say, you cannot sit and learn all day, or you don't even have the ability from background, right? So that's okay. The I think there's certain aspects of Hasidic that Misnagdim are very much opposed to. The idea of a tzaddik, a rebbe, who's at the helm of your group, and you go to him for answers on everything. It's not like consulting a rav, Shiloh, there's some question in halacha. It's like they can't move, or make any decisions without consulting with his rebbe. So it's sort of like the rebbe becomes this intermediary between the pasha and the individual and God. And that's another major reason why they oppose Hasidus. We don't believe in that. We might revere a rav, and we do, of course, but we're revering them for their learning, not because they think they're doing something magic, or they used to give out amulets, little things. Where and that this would bring you good luck, and whereas Misnagdim are totally opposed to this. It's interesting. I told you how sometimes in tefillah among the Hasidim it can get very, lively sometimes. But it's interesting. The Vilna Gaon did remove from the tefillah of the Ashkenazi prayer a lot of the piyutim, a lot of these dirges. I was, was think. I mean, some of them were their poetry. And for example, like I know if you go to shul, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, there can be a lot of piyutim, and the rabbi will say, yep. Because first of all, they're very difficult. They're not easy to understand. So they just decided it's not necessarily, it's like stumbling. And I have a pretty good command of Hebrew, but boy, when some of those kids, I feel like I'm my feet, So I just read first when I read the English, because I think it's more important to understand, what I'm davening than to, as I say, be stumbling over everything. All right. So the Gaon, did remove the piyutim. Interesting. He did not like that pilpul method of learning, and he would encourage people who would gather about him to not do that. It's like nitpicking, trying to find all kinds of little nuances in what you're learning, but to the extent that it was over and beyond what is necessary, and that those people were wasting their time, were being show-offs, and this man was a brilliant man, but he did not like that skillful method of learning, and he convinced people to stop doing it. All right, just one of we studied before. Study the text. That's the most important. Study the text. Obviously, you look at the various misfortunes, but first, just study the text and master that. Try to understand it. And then you can go into other. Don't tear everything apart. And this I found very interesting, that he was not opposed, actually encouraged, secular knowledge. Now, when I say secular knowledge, he didn't sit and study, read novels. Okay, he was. You need what? It's the law of illness. So let me just the copy here. Okay. So obviously this is from the Rambam, these are people prior to the Rambam. And it's okay, for example, to study the sciences, math, because you need them to calculation, calendar, although at that point, permanent, you know. That's why astronomy, um, you know, all these various things. He did study some philosophy, but it wouldn't necessarily say he would encourage to study philosophy for people unless you could really master it and understand it and see how different it was from Judaism. So there's a mixture of opinion about how much he you know, did approve of study philosophy. All the sciences, obviously, that would include medicine, mathematics. Um, so, it's not like you should live such a tight, closed life. But, because he felt whatever you're learning from the outside world, it's only adding then to your knowledge and appreciation of Torah. And I mean, I know I feel this way sometimes when I'm learning something, and then I had learned this. Let's say, well, I haven't took history, and I could see, oh my gosh, how it relates, or there's something in it that I feel is totally against, let's say, uh, proper Torah learning, but it enhances then your own appreciation for Torah. Well, he personally, yes, right, right. But that's why I remember like when my father here got they used to say that in general, opposed obviously to Hasidus and movements, but then he said, but the Lubavitcher, he knows how. So he was okay. I have to tell you, by the way, my father had a study, with all farm and different things. And one time I see sitting on his desk this picture of my Zeta with some other love. I thought, that's a beautiful. I thought, Daddy, can I have it? I had it framed and everything. And one day, this Rabbi Vogel, who was the Chabad rabbi in our town, came by and he went to the the den where I had this picture hung on the wall. He says, "Why do you have a picture there? Is it called the Freya Vicar Rebbe? I don't know. The one before this last Rebbe." I said, "What do you mean? That's my Zeta." So apparently, it must have been in the 1930s. I think he had come to America. Might have been in a good, uh, gathering of some sort of convention. And this picture was taken, but they're both looking, they're very dressed really nice. Of course, Baba Rebbe's hat's different than my Zeta wore. Top hat. But he's there with my mother called it, I didn't even know this. He called it Prince Albert coat. I guess Prince Albert, used to wear this, or that was popular in England. And, with a cane, and they're both, they're not like smiling, if it's, but it was just this beautiful picture of these two, but what's interesting, I look at it, I see my Zeta, and this, it's very interesting. We're doing the Gaon of Vilna. I have here a few left. This is my last one. So, what I would like to recommend to you, those who are loyal to me, coming for a long, long time, if you could please save what I hand out and buy yourself and keep it the folder, because sometimes you might like to also just to refer back, to something. So it's hard. So you there? Okay. But that's a different. Yeah, yeah, perfect. Okay. Um, Let me see what else I can say. It's interesting, although I would say mostly studying Torah, and obviously studying the portion, halacha, and on halacha. And but I just wanted you to understand why this conflict grew and why they're so opposed to Hasidic. First of all, I think they felt dumbing down study and learning of Torah. And he felt like you could come to joy through the study, not by so to speak saying, "Oh, don't worry, you don't have to sit and learn. You have the ability to do so." But as long as as I say, primarily through prayer, through davening, that would be okay. But in this Snapisha world, the study of Torah, limud Torah, highest possible thing. Through that, you will come to joy. And I had mentioned this to you in the past. I know myself. Sometimes just happen in life. You're troubled about something, but if you sit and you open up the Sefer and you read, it's like you forget about it. You do. You achieve a level of peace and joy, just through studying Torah. Okay. And again, they were totally opposed to Kabbalah. It's interesting. He studied Kabbalah, but it was interesting. It's more to derive from the study of Kabbalah, further insights on in the Torah, but not to do the Kabbalah like exclusively. Like even in the Hasidic world, that's studying Kabbalah and the Tanya, right? The Lubavitcher. That's it. It's Kabbalah. You know, and I certainly was in the house ever studied. So, let me just see what else I have to. Look at page 3. So those of you who have the Gaona Vilna thing in front of you. So I'm just going to start there. Page 3, where it says the Gaona Vilna. All right, and if not, you'll just listen. All right. The Misnabim failed to see Hasidism was an expression of the need of the masses for a simple religion of warmth and feeling. I mentioned this to you before. I mean, they were answering a need among the people. They were at a very low point. The government's falling apart in Poland at this time period. I mean, soon, into the 19th century, ended up the whole country is going to fall apart, and part's going to go to Russia, and part's going to go Austria-Hungary, and part's going to go to Prussia, Germany. And they're looking for something. They're looking for something special in their lives that will bring them great solace, and peace. And through Hasidism, again, not being raised in that sort of a household, I actually, if I'm not from Indian, that they're more Hasidish, I can't remember. I guess we are. It's not. We're more straightforward with davening. He found he looked at the considering that they're taking away the dignity, right? Of how one should daven and say the various and they felt, for example, there was all this emphasis on Kabbalah and mysticism, but not such a stress on learning Torah. This is the preeminent way of approaching things close to God is through limud Torah. Okay. And then well, you can see what happened. I mean, it started with the Baal Shem Tov, then goes to the Magid message, and then all of a sudden it diverges into all these different groups. I grew up in a small town, grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So my father was the Orthodox, right? And then there were 2 conservative shuls, and there was a reform congregation. And then there was this one small little congregation, where most of the Jews didn't live there so much anymore. And it's called Machzike Hadas. I never even knew who these people were. I found out afterwards it was college, but I never knew them growing up. So that's it. I knew there were 3 types of Jews. You were Orthodox, you were conservative, you were Reform. I go to New York City for high school. Oh my God. I didn't realize that even within the Orthodox world, there were a gazillion different branches. So it was like quite a rude awakening to find that out. Okay. And this Hasidic movement, which I told you was mostly Southern Poland, but it actually even made inroads into northern Poland, Lithuania. People were very much about it. Apparently, when the Gaon of Vilna passed away, um, that this great mourning. Can you imagine Vilna among that northern part of Poland and Lithuania? But the Hasidim, were carrying on whatever they were doing, and the Masonic got even angrier. So Papa Covo, who was genius, right, who had passed away, and that was in the year 1796. Now, I mean, we wouldn't do this nowadays, but in those days, if you were in opposition to somebody else's interpretation of Yahweh and you had the power, you would put that other individual or group into peril. You would excommunicate them. And this is what happened to the Hasidim, to Rabbeim in this time period 4 times. This Mishnah community, right, puts the Hasidim in Cherem. And once was in 1772, once was in 1781, and then later in 1797. This is after already the Gaon had passed away. And the last and final was in 1830. Let's understand. There are different ways, we say shivim panim, there are different ways of studying and of approaching, trying to draw close to Hashem. To get after all these ridiculous years of fighting, it was like enough, and that you won't hear about it. And it certainly, I don't think the fear I told you of the people from this Navisha world was that the Hasidim would, because of their emphasis on Kabbalah, this belief in the Rebbe and this miracle temptation things that he can do, would draw people away from authentic Yahweh. But I think by 1830, they're not. I mean, it just was, obviously, they didn't like it, they were opposed to it, but that it was Judaism. It was another way, as I said, close to Hashem. Okay. Yes.
The enmity formally ended until 1840.
Well,
when there was a fight.
Yeah, right.
Two people into prison on the island of Manila. The Senate said it in the typical allusion. And the two men were in the same prison cell, and they before they had met, and they realized except the same person once that they both believed the same thing.
Right, ultimately,
right. When they formally issued saying enough is enough.
That's enough fighting. Right. But the last official Cherem is in 1830. So that's the last Cherem that's going to be issued. Okay. And also that's 19th century. I'm talking more about 18th century. That's what I try to do everything chronological, so you know what's going on in the Jewish world. Okay. See if I have something else I want to add here. Hold on. Okay, now I'm up to page 4 of the thing about the Gaon. Okay, and then I do have a thing here about Taban. That customer being a Gaon. Okay. No, on page 4, the next one.
Yes. Excuse me. Could you speak louder? Excuse me. Could you speak louder into the computer?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Much better.
All right, good. So I don't know if you ever printed it out where you are, but I had Andrea it's part of what she sends out to everybody. So you should have my sheets. That way it's easier to follow. Okay. All right. So we talked about Shabbat. I mean, again, it's still not part of my world or my upbringing. I mean, my husband once sort of leaning a little bit towards it. And so I went with him once to Chabad. That 770. That was not for me at all. And one other thing, I guess in later YouTube, people also would criticize the Hasidic movement. How they, what's that called in the Rebbe eat something and then they you know, right. So I don't know. I'm up there on the women's gallery. I was bored out of my mind. I just couldn't read. I'd also spoke in Yiddish, and I don't know Yiddish. So, you know, right. So God bless them. But it's not my style of Judaism. All right. I mean, but those people who like believe in this Rebbe, or if you're above a verse, Gerrer Chassid, oh my God, what the Rebbe says, that's it, you know. And to me, they go to consult with him on certain trivial matters, like they can't make a decision on their own. I just didn't grow up in that sort of, you know, way of life, or my yahadus. It's very good because I do come from this world. There, what we're going to be going into later is, so you talked about 1848. That was a time period of revolution. But you have to understand there's going to be another movement, a major movement that's going to start in Western Europe. It's going to eventually impact these Jews here in Eastern Europe, and that's the Haskalah, the Enlightenment. And now here I told you the going to Northam was fine to study secular knowledge, but you know, in the Enlightenment period, they're putting extra emphasis on this. They wanted that we should assimilate. I mean, and it didn't initially start that they should leave Judaism, but that they should be accepted by the non-Jewish world, and as a result, though, a gradual bridge, and that's how the reform movement. But we'll do everything step by step. Okay, let me just see if there's anything else here I wanted to add. Okay, I told you, and eventually Poland will be divided. Well, we'll come to an end. It will not exist anymore until one. Right? There's some other major. I'll just mention their names. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Rabbi, okay, and there's also really not Bratislav, you know, and yeah, I don't know anything stuff, you know. I have heard of these. I've been wrote, I guess there's stories, you know, that you can get of this. And I mean, I think we need to give, you know, credence, you know, and actually, you know, thanks to this, though, this Hasidic movement, these people, these Jews who were so downcast, you know, thank God, it lifted them spiritually, and look, they're still existing, they're still going, you know, out there. And I think, you know, there was obviously being an American Jew. I was born in America. My parents were born in America. Even have a grandmother who was born in the United States. But I think it was those Hasidim who came after World War II who added so much to Orthodox Jewish life. I mean, it definitely existed. I mean, there were definitely some day schools already, but not as much. But when those Hasidim came, and they had to totally rebuild their lives. I mean, they were coming after the Holocaust. So it did add, you know. And I remember when I went to school, well, they weren't Hasidim, but you know, but they were coming out of that Polish Jewish world, and I would say like half of my friends were probably children of Holocaust survivors.
They went to the neighborhood. I don't know, fit in the environment.
Right. And they all speak Yiddish. Obviously, the Jews already in America were speaking English.
Right.
So this was a comfort for them to live in. Although when I was in Israel, my year in Israel was 67. I went even earlier.
Could you please talk louder? Sorry.
I know, but you know, I'm doing my best. Okay, I have a lot of people here. I have to face them, so you're going to have to do your best. Um, and I remember going to, I think it was Montessori. We actually was some assimilation in my family of somebody from the Miss Novice world that was cousin of Zeta. Married her. I said, "Hey." So they're living in Montessori, and all they come there. It's a very, very frum neighborhood in Jerusalem, and they're only speaking Yiddish. So I had a very, a little bit boring time, visiting them. And my cousin, if you have ever went into Mea Sharim, uh, his name is Simcha Bunam Stern, and he owned an electrics shop in Mea Sharim. He was a lovely, lovely person. And his it could be, I don't know. Later, though, his son, who was not as so from, he had on Rouse, off of Ben Yehuda, he had an electric store. I say an electric store, it wasn't just appliances. I mean, it was light, like a lighting. Right, right. And I remember, my way my father described it as that because the woman cousin, like she had left the fold, um, yeah. Right, right. Yeah. Right, yeah. Yes, right, yes. So very two different worlds. Um, Another thing of the goal that I'd like to emphasize, I think it's very important, and it made me think of the Rambam and the other schools. And also, if you go to the Israel Museum, the Shrine of the Book, how there's a considered like a really authentic scroll, right, of the Torah, and it's came from Aleppo Codex, Codex. Um, but the Gaon also was very makpid, very careful to that he should have an authentic text, and he studied this, and he would go over numerous copies from all that the Jewish world, and then he would make certain emendations, corrections, where he felt. I mean, even to this day, I mean, people study the Gemara, you'll sometimes come to something that doesn't seem to make sense. And it could be because when it's copied over so many times, errors do occur. And that is why, even if you look in throughout Tanakh, you'll see a printed a word, but in the margin, it will, then there's something in parentheses because it will say, "This is the Kettiv." Okay, this is how it's written. What's come down, I guess, through the Masorah, but it's Korean, but you read it differently, right? So I would imagine some of this is also due to somebody like and for example, the Gemara that people use nowadays, it's the Vilna edition of the Gemara. So it's probably based on things that the Gaon had written down. Okay. I mean, but you have to be really a brilliant person to determine which and again, you can only do this. He compared various editions, from other parts of the world. There is just some interesting things. Remember, I told you he was sort of like a loner. He learning on his own. He only started really having students when he reached the age of 40. That's what he said. We always say kind of religion is his chief follower of the Vilna Gaon because but not till he was 40. Up until then, he would sit primarily alone in his secluded, room or hut, actually outside of his house, and that's where he would sit and learn. There are two times during his life that he actually leaves Vilna. So there's one time that he leaves actually for about 5 years. I don't know, never from high school. He goes out because he wanted to visit other Jewish communities. He wanted to see what other learned individuals, are out there, and also just to learn from Jews wherever they live, and add to his knowledge. But I think he reached eventually Prussia, and then somebody, shared the fact that, here's this genius, from Vilna in our midst, and that was the end of his secret travels. There was also a time period where, close to the end of his life, where he wanted very much to go and settle in Eretz. And he actually set out on the journey, but he wasn't well at that point, and he had difficulty, traveling. So we had to return to Vilna. But you know that there was following of his for Vilna who do make Aliyah and go and Yerushalayim, a very active Jewish community. Because in Jerusalem, sometimes we'll do a whole thing just on settlement in Israel, but a lot of the original ones were really all Sephardim, Ashkenazim. Okay, let me see. I look in different sources. I get little tidbits of information from wherever else I'm looking. Oh, this one, remember I told you how he said it was fine to study certain points of secular learning. One of the things that he also approved of was the study of music. Isn't that interesting? Because music lifts up your spirit, right? You ever hear certain, I used to compose sometimes. I had this president with organizations, but sometimes, like if my husband and I were traveling and we had some Jewish music on, moved me. So I like in my head I would compose what I wanted to say. Then we got back, I had to pass, write it all down. So he recognized the importance of music. I guess anybody who's a music teacher would love to hear this. They talk about art, but I don't a discipline that they would study. Okay. All right, so just in general, a lot of political maneuverings going on in Poland at this time. I told you the king is losing his control over the country. And that's all going to be happening there at that end of that 18th century. Okay. One other thing, another thing I think that the students is that remember they were basically a Ashkenazi way of davening, but they started davening with Nusach Ali, the Arizal, who was a Kabbalist from Tzfat in Israel, originally Cairo, but then Tzfat, and they followed that Nusach. My youngest son is a rabbi, Davis Marks in London, which is a Spanish Portuguese synagogue. And, but he had before that for 6 years he had worked as a rabbi in Shevet Israel, New York City, which is also the oldest synagogue in America, and was Spanish. It's still to this day it's Spanish Portuguese. But there was a big controversy with the Touro synagogue in Newport. I don't know if you know that. I'm sure it was. In the end, it's Shevet Israel. That's what the judge decided. There wasn't in Newport. So I guess a group of they must have been somewhat Hasidic Jews asked if they could use the premises to daven, but then Spanish Portuguese way of davening had nothing to them, and it was Nusach davening, former Spanish Portuguese show. Okay, I think. No, it depends how large the show is. My son, no, you're mixing things up. You're adding something. That's the only thing with the sand, St. Thomas. If you go to the Spanish Portuguese school there, which was no longer Orthodox, like weird. I wonder if some of them are even Jewish. No, Curacao, might have it also, but that's more. But the one at St. Thomas. Uh, I understand there are some from people who live in St. Thomas business wise, so they have their own congregation. Okay. Again, this is deal with that with Rabbi Shneur, the Zalman of Lodi, the founder. That again, it's part of his personality. So this big dispute between the Hasidim and the Hasidim also, was tempered, and came to an. I mean, it's still there. I mean, obviously, was raised in a household that I always about the tension, between the two groups. Let me see how we doing time with object. So did everybody get the Lithuania and Poland, and we're going to go to Germany. Central Europe. Germany and Austria. Now, you have to think Germany is divided up into and the major one, certainly in the 19th century, is going to be Russia, and Russia touches Poland. Right? So, of course, there's a little background before during what we're going to mention as let's start reading it together. Oh, you didn't get what's happening? Okay. Well, okay. Yeah. If you could come up and get it. Also, this lady Reba who's listening in, she can't hear me when I'm turn. All right. Okay. So we finished now the Jews of Poland. So this is just a general fact. Let's start reading and then you'll understand what happened to it had been a very, very vibrant area of Jewish culture and learning in Germany. But we're talking about centuries before. So what changed and why is there now a revival again? So I'll read it with you. We're on page 1. Okay. Because while Hasidism was rising in Eastern Europe and causing a rift with the large Jewish population living there, the Jews of Central Europe were gradually finding a place in the economic place of their homeland. So what happened there? They were being pulled out of their ghetto prison to help rebuild the lands ravaged by the 30 Years' War. So from 1618 to 1648, there was this major war in Europe. It's Central Europe. All right, the France was involved too. I would say France. Central Europe would be, as I said, Germany, Austria, which eventually will become the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but then also that's which was more 19th century. And for example, it would also include Czechoslovakia, right? And in those days would be Bohemia and Moravia. And that's So that's when I say Central Europe, that's the area I'm referring to. So during this 30 years war that was going on, many Jews left Germany and they went to Poland. Well, what happens in 1648? We had the Khmelnytsky, pogroms, attacks on the Jewish people. And so eventually some of those formerly German Jews, and they go back to Germany because there's more stability, in their lives there. But obviously nobody has total freedom there. I think next time we'll talk a little bit about emancipation and what that meant, and then how the Enlightenment movement began, and it all going to begin, France and Germany, also that part of the world will only spread eastward into the 19th century. So to them, those Jews of Poland and Lithuania, these were backward Jews. So we're still living, in ancient times, but we'll discuss it right now. So we're going to be talking about Wisconsin. That's Rashi and posters. I mean, these brilliant Rabbanim, but it's right away we're talking around the 1600s now. Things became left, many of them left to go elsewhere. But now some of them are going to start drifting back. All right. But again, you'll see they're not accepted, by the Christian population there. A reason because they were very much involved in trade and commerce, and it brought wealth, to the different princes or dukes, or, whoever, was the head. And in Germany, in particular, there was a king, but he's called the elect term until eventually they don't. Things change with Bismarck. You don't remember any of your world history? Anyway, I'll intermingle it, when we come to this point. So Poland starting to fall apart, right? And Germany is going to rise, in power. So I think I'm going to pause now. I have to go home, pick up my husband, come back to this area because I just work. So everybody should be well. Have a good week, Miss Hashem. I look forward to seeing you then. Bye, Reva. Bye, pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Okay, goodbye.
I don't see the sheets that you said Andrea included.
Call Andrea and ask her. She'll be sure to send them to you. So just
Okay,
stick with her.